Hey guys, this is me. I'm here in Chicago, and I thought I would just film for you all and do another lesson. Obviously, I'm showing you just a little bit of the skyline right here close by my hotel, and as you can see from right over that direction, the top of that building over there is covered up by the fog and low clouds. So it raises up so high into the sky that you can't see the top of the building. There's a lot more buildings like that closer to where I'm working, which I'll show you some more of. It's kind of interesting noticing that when people that aren't from around here, they walk around and they're looking up because they're not used to seeing buildings this high. I catch myself doing it from time to time. But this is just a park right here close by where I've been staying, and just wanted to share my lesson. And I started reading in the book of Genesis in chapter 11, and what I found in chapter 11 was the story of the Tower of Babel. So in the Tower of Babel, see, there's a bunch of these people. They were in a land, right? And these people had come from the east. They started moving west, and they started building a city. They started building a grand city, and probably something that would be somewhat impressive, like what I'm seeing right now. And amidst all of these buildings, which I'll show some clip, hopefully you'll see in some of these clips when I edit the video. They decided that they were going to build a tall tower, up so tall that they were going to reach the gods. And God was seeing this. He noticed this in chapter 11. And so, like, this starts in the very first verse in that chapter, and for the next 10, 11 verses or so, you'll read this story. And what happens is God sees that these people are doing this, and He does not like the fact that they are not worshiping Him. They're worshiping themselves, and they're finding that they think that they themselves are something great. That's why they start building this tower. And so they're building this tower, and He decides that He is going to confuse the people, and they're building it brick by brick, closer and closer to the sun, and it's just reaching really, really high up and tall. And so as they keep building and building and building, He decides that He's going to confuse them, and He scatters them amongst the land, and they all begin teaching or speaking different languages. And so now, as they're trying to build things, they can't understand each other very well. And one thing I noticed in a city like this, when you get into a bigger city, you run into a lot of people who speak different languages. So they're speaking these different languages, and sometimes communication is tough. Now, a lot of people, they learn their English here, but it's not exactly the most understandable. It's harder to understand than, say, us people back home. And so I found it kind of interesting how there's this correlation between big cities like what I'm in right now, working, and walking down the streets and finding my way around, and noticing all the different languages that I hear spoke, all the dialects that I hear spoke, and how there's confusion sometimes communicating with these different people, and so it's hard to understand. And this happens in a big city where you see that there are these big towers, these big buildings, which I've been taking some pictures of that you'll see, that resemble the Tower of Babel. And God didn't like when we began erecting these big structures to be impressive, thinking that we were great amongst ourselves and that we were something special because of something we did. So when I started looking at this and started realizing everything that was going on, I noticed that there's this reflection in our lives that when we start to build things up in ourselves and we start to rely on ourselves and we start to think that we are something great and start doing things just to be impressive and not for God, that God doesn't like that. And just like in the story in Genesis chapter 11, the Tower of Babel, he confused those people. We finally did something with them, and they had to pay for what they have done. If we live a life from beginning to end that's all about us, thinking that we are something great and that we are doing something that is impressive amongst ourselves, and we're not living for God and we're not doing things that are for God, then it's just like we're building our own tower, and eventually God's not going to like it, and He's going to do something to take us down a notch. I don't want to be that person, so I want you all to remember that in everything that you do it for the glory of God, and you do it with Him in mind, and you do it to impress Him, because otherwise you're going to be like some of these people here in the city. When you try to communicate with God, it's not going to work properly. Everything's going to fall apart. So while you're thinking about that and all the things that you do on a daily in and out basis, think, are you able to communicate with God? Are you communicating with Him freely? Does He understand you? Are you all speaking the same language? Sometimes I feel like I'm not speaking the same language as God. He's talking, but I'm not understanding. And that's a problem. That's a problem when we don't understand what He's saying. We're not understanding what He's asking of us, and we're just not getting that communication down. That means our relationship isn't close enough, and that means that we need to work harder on it. Get more into His Word. We need to get more into the things of Him. So I just pray and hope that when you finish this lesson and you all have prayer, that you strive to have a closer relationship with God, so that when you start doing things, you're doing it for Him, and you don't end up in a state of confusion because you're building towers to yourself. Please, with all that you do, follow God with your heart. Trust Him with everything, and He will guide you in the right path. Love you guys, and I'll see you this week.